I want to say sorry to our guest because we had him helping us figure this table. It's unethical for guests actually. So I feel deeply bad about it. Sorry. And I feel personally Dr. Raut is an actual best example of how do we do practice, which is actually producing knowledge and at the same time putting it into an action. Hundreds of students have benefited from the virtual discourse and efforts, including me. Dr. Raut, who also goes by Navayana, is currently a postdoctoral fellow at the Master School, where he teaches and researches on Navayana Buddhism and social action. Originally, Dr. Raut has affiliation with English and Foreign Language University, the capacity of assistant professor in the Department of Aesthetics and Philosophy, and he is also a director of Community Institute called Nagarjuna Training Institute in Nagpur, which trains it has trained hundreds of backward caste students, upper caste students for like more than 20 years. And he designs course for it, and he is very devoted part of the institute itself, which I have personally visited, and that institute has actually changed the lives of hundreds of students in India. Coming to his research, he mainly researches on Navayana Buddhism, exploring its transformative role in social justice, and a vision rooted in the ideas of Dr. Ambedkar, who was the pioneer of socialist and civil rights movement in India. It is an honor and privilege to have you sir here. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Raut.
Nice to be with you. Good afternoon, everyone. Because of time constraint, I'm capturing some of my presentation. But this is something exciting in happening in Buddhist world, especially with the intervention, the way Dr. Ambedkar has sort of presented the Buddha before world. It is unconventional. It is transcending the boundaries of formalism. And I will just read first para of my paper for those who are quite new to what Dr. Ambedkar and Buddhism means here. I think Dr. Ambedkar's Buddhist movement is one of the most dynamic and optimist social movements in the world today. Many changes have taken place in the Ambedkar and Buddhist movement in the last 40 years. In the late 70s, the Buddhist movement was largely defined by the ex-Mahar community in Maharashtra, as opposed to the scheduled caste communities, as well as few pockets in the major towns of India. The wider scheduled caste movement for basic human rights and equality was arriving in different parts of India, but more often than no divide by religion, by caste, by politics, and by different scheduled caste leaders unable to work with each other. In Maharashtra, there were many stalwarts from the grassroots movement who was crippled by the division among leaders. So even Buddhist aspect of Dr. Ambedkar's life becomes a part of political divides, where Dr. Ambedkar was envisaging that his Dhamma, or his presentation of Buddhism, can play two roles. First is to empower the people psychologically, and also becomes a cementing force to bind the people together to emerge as a power, cultural power, a social power, and of course eventually a political power. So I think the last days of Dr. Ambedkar's life is not very well understood by many of the followers, and probably in the writings we see by scholars too, because there are two important dispositions that Dr. Ambedkar wanted to have. First is a moral disposition. Moral disposition in the sense the way society has structured and how morals are defined for the group of each caste and the communities. And secondly, transcending the barriers that are watertightly closed among the individuals to remain divide eternally. So it was in early 1950s that Dr. Ambedkar was thinking deeply about acting on the great act of Buddhist conversion. He called a meeting of his close followers that included Nanak Chandra who was one of his very close associates, Bhimrao Ambedkar, who was a secretary for the conversion ceremony, and other close associates at his residence 26 Alipur Road, New Delhi. He was tried and was not doing great in terms of his health. On the scheduled time, he arrived with the help of Nanak Chandra and sat among the assembly of his close associates with his faithful followers. He announced in a closed-door meeting that he is going to embrace Buddhism. Most of his close associates were not happy about his announcement, as they were thinking that Republican Party of India is recently formed, we have written the manifesto of it, and we are going to get into a political power and our problem will be resolved. That's what everyone thought. But on asking a question by Bhimrao Ambedkar, which I interviewed in 1999, so it came in my conversation with him too. He's died before a few years. Why he is bringing a question of religion when they are striving hard for a political power to resolve all problem in the community? So Dr. Ambedkar's deep in his thought responded that even his close associate did not understand the totality of the change that he wanted to bring in India. It's a religious hierarchy that brings oppression to the people, and it's a root cause, however lower caste progresses politically or economically. Their socio-cultural and religious slavery is going to be continued. If they went liberation, they must get out of the hierarchical caste system. And I see no hope in the reformation of caste system. Therefore, I'm going to embrace the Buddha-Dhamma. That's what he says. So I think many of his followers, as I said, not focused on his last years of his life. In other words, there is a lot of focus has been given on his political, economical, social and educational vision of Dr. Ambedkar. So there are numerous places where he writes and expounds his vision on Buddha-Dhamma as an instrument of reconstruction of the society. So this is what Dr. Ambedkar made or chalked out the different plan for emancipation of his people. So from early 1920s, Dr. Ambedkar started talking about the need of the so-called untouchables to live Hindu religion and convert to another religion if they wanted to progress, if they wanted a progress and a dignity. Although early on early years he developed the thought that the Buddha is the best way to go forward from the complexities of divine caste system. And in second half of 1930s, that the Buddhism began to emerge as a possible alternative for him. He had an enormous responsibility at his shoulder. What path he should choose, millions were bound to follow, and his decision therefore would affect not only their lives and the lives of descendants, but given the community's delicacy of Indian society, the future course that Indian history is going to follow. So there is a need for a doctrinal basis, religion, and that could be the basis will be consonance with the liberty, equality and fraternity, in short with democracy. This would entail a complete change in the fundamental notion of life itself and means of people as they relate with each other, and complete change in the values of life. It means a complete change, I'm quoting him, it means a complete change in outlook and in attitude towards men and things. It means conversion But if you do not want or do not like the word convergent, I would say a new ways of life. It was the resilience that a truly democratic society could only be brought about by a deep change in attitude. Only the Buddha can help in creating a democratic society, as he said. He realized that the necessity of an ethical foundation for governance. In all societies, law plays merely a small part. It is intended to keep in a minority within the range of social discipline. The majority is left and has to be left to sustain its social life by postulates the sanction of the morality. And immediately after conversion, Dr. Ambedkar in 1956 said that the greatest thing that the Buddha has done to the world, that world cannot be reformed unless you reform your own mind. So these are the strong ideas Dr. Ambedkar had about Buddhism. And of course, when I'm talking about Navayana Buddhism, I do not want to go into a lot of history of how caste, Buddhism and democracy Dr. Ambedkar was trying to enjoin. But one cannot have Navayana or the idea of Navayana unless we understand the presentation of Dhamma that Dr. Ambedkar was putting in. So Dhamma for him, he redefines the religion. So first of all, the criteria for his religion, as he inherits, that itself becomes a great legacy for him. So he cites various suttas, which is probably available here in volume 11, the supplements he produced. For example, Esukari Sutta. Esukari Sutta comes from Digha Nikaya, where Dr. Ambedkar emphasizes on Ditticha Ujjucca. Ditticha Ujjucca means strengthening your right view, and that is important to envisage the Buddha I am going to present before you. So unless you do not understand what view Buddha comes from, it would be only a conventions, following the conventions of Buddhism, which Dr. Ambedkar has a but some problem. So he was introspecting within the Buddhist fold, where Brahmin says that I should hold a superior position. In Lohicha Sutta, for example, then Dr. Ambedkar emphasizes on Sat Sutta, saying that Brahmin holds the all power of the knowledge, which Buddha denies. So he is bringing and digging up and sort of producing a travesty where the Buddha would position in such a way that would produce the society based on liberty, equality and fraternity, justice and self-dignity. These are the parameters Dr. Ambedkar tries to put when he is trying to canvas the picture of the Buddha. Secondly, in the preface, he says, I think that preface, I don't know if it is here, but I found that preface with Yalar Bali, who was a very close associate of Dr. Ambedkar in his early age. He also recently died. And in his memoirs, and when I saw him, he also told me that this preface Dr. Ambedkar emphasizes on removing the contradiction within Buddha's teaching is foremost important. And for those contradictions, there are 2 points that Dr. Ambedkar emphasizes about karma and rebirth. Let us not I do not have much time to unfold karma and rebirth theory, but this is something that cause and effect that what Buddha was trying to say in the first Dhammapada, Monopobongama Dhamma Monosetra Monomaya Manasache Padukena Bhasati Vataro. The way you act, that's how your mind is formed. The way you accumulate your actions, that's what you become. That's the model Dr. Ambedkar was trying to emphasize on the basis of karma and not short-circuiting karma with your birth or the karmas of your past birth. You are a woman because you have done something bad in your past. You are a black because you have done something bad in the past. You are a Dalit or lower caste because you have done something in past life. And therefore you see the scheme of his ordination. Patachara, she was a lower caste. Chandalika was an untouchable woman. Sunita was an untouchable. Upali was a barber. So he lists those stories of Buddha's ordination for producing or giving a picture how Buddha was inclusive. And he even cites as if all rivers merge into an ocean and you cannot recognize which water is from which river. That's how the nature of the Sangha of the Buddha. That was the vision Dr. Ambedkar gives in Buddha and Ashoka. Second notion is the dukkha, the first noble truth. I was speaking yesterday that Dr. Ambedkar wanted to warn his people that do not take dukkha as your destiny. Right? Buddha was right, saying that yes, there is dukkha, because world is full of impermanence and then nothing lasts forever. No pleasure lasts forever. So Buddha is right, but that is more universal and probably the reality as it is, as he saw. But how to translate that? Dukkha in America is different. Dukkha in India is different. Dukkha in various parts of cultures are different. Right? I have to contextualize that dukkha and needs to understand what is the cause for it. So poverty is a cause for dukkha. Your identity as a lower caste or black or whatever lower you are, that's the cause of dukkha. So even if I attain enlightenment, how do I translate in my day-to-day life? How do I manifest that my enlightenment in my behavior? That is something of prime concern to him. So he was trying to let people know that dukkha is a reality but not a destiny. You are not destined to be a saint. And third point I wanted to do, where Dr. Ambedkar says in probably book 3 in Buddha and Dhamma, I'm just reading very short statement of him. If principle needs the authority of a man, it is no principle. If every time it becomes necessary to evoke the name of the founder of enforced authority of Dhamma, then that is not Dhamma. And no, you do not need a privileged class to protect the Dhamma. If you need a privileged class to protect Dhamma, that is not Dhamma. So he is categorizing Dhamma, Sadhamma and Adhamma, where he is trying to make us understand, us here plural, not just one particular caste. Because Buddhism, he embraced, of course, for his community, but he is introducing the great son of India, where people would have a new light to see a civilizational history, a cultural history, and alternative past. That's what Dr. Ambedkar was trying to unleash, what is sort of buried in Indian past. What happens when we need a privileged class to protect the Dhamma? We produce the priesthood class. We produce the priest who holds the all power. Your ritualistic power, your divine power, and that's where then your terms are defined. Your actions are judged. That's what Dr. Ambedkar was skeptical of. He uses the word in annihilation of us, Swayambhu. Third point I wanted to put as an aspect of Navayana Buddha, he was ordained by Uchandramani, who was the senior most monk from Burma. But after ordination, Dr. Ambedkar himself gave Diksha, or Diksha is ordination, to his people, right? So in formal, conventional Buddhist world, monks are supposed to give the Diksha. Otherwise you are not ordained. But Dr. Ambedkar himself gave Diksha to his people and said, Dare Kane Dare Diksha. That means ordination for all by all. So he's also transcending that formalistic structure while he is defining Navayana Buddha, that you do have a right to ordain, and therefore then he jumps on the idea of Sangha. Sangha, that my Sangha would be fourfold. I want lay people to be ordained in the Sangha. Just in last 4 minutes, I would just read part from Buddha and Dhamma. He says very radically, Ambedkar reads the early record differently. In a memorable passage from the Buddha and his Dhamma, Ambedkar imagined the stern marching orders of the embattled Buddha to his disciple. I'm quoting, "Bhikkhu must fight to spread virtue. We wage war or disciple. Therefore we are called warriors. For lofty virtues, for high endeavor, for sublime wisdom, where virtues are in danger, do not avoid fighting. Do not merely be mobbed." He was not hinting violence, definitely. What he meant, fight by striving diligently. You need a struggle. So he sort of projects a different force while he is talking about the Sangha as a fraternity, as a fraternal force. And when he wrote Indian Constitution and given to the first president of India, he said that an experience of democracy is not new to Indian civilization. It was very much existed in Buddha Sangha. So he is linking of what the political changes or the changes in civil life or in the social life of people, he is anchoring that back in the Buddha's wisdom. I do not need to quote that I have borrowed liberty, equity, fraternity from my master, the Buddha. That is all well-known quotes by him. But more than the quote, I wanted to establish the connections. I wanted to establish the threads that he is borrowing from ancient wisdom. After writing all these great volumes, a small book is missing here. That's called Buddha Puja Part, which is there, I think, in volume 11 or 16, where he translated Buddham Saranam Gacchami in Marathi, Me Buddhala Anusarto. Often in a traditional Pali, Buddham Saranam Gacchami means Me Buddhala Sharanjato. I am taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma or Sangha. But Dr. Ambedkar made a difference in Marathi. Anusarto means I am following the footsteps of the Buddha. So there is a slight shift in the spirit. He's saying that I am not surrendering myself to the Buddha like any other gods. I am sort of following his footsteps with uptight my dignity, so that I can also become the Buddha. So he is educating with the spirit of Navayana with that force. Lastly, I don't know what shall I choose, but sort of associate living and the Maitri. Of course, he borrowed a lot of inspiration from John Dewey, and Professor Scott has done a great work, and I salute his work. It's so educating back in our community in India, and that really goes to Professor Scott. I'm very thankful for that research. Nonetheless, Maitri, the way he defines, while he was defining the democracy, he was saying that fraternity is not enough word to define the democracy of my vision. I need to borrow the word from the dictionary of the Buddha, and he uses the word Maitri. Maitri is the spirit of my democracy. Now, what Maitri is not a friendship, I mean superficial friendship. Maitri is a Sanskrit word, comes from the, or the Pali word for Maitri is metta. Me, atta. Me means I. Atta means the other. You are exactly like me. You do not like suffering, I don't like suffering. You don't like oppression, I don't like oppression. You want dignity, I want dignity. You want freedom, I want freedom. That's the empathetic unity Buddha sort of evokes in the word metta. That's what Dr. Ambedkar meant by living together, associate living, reverence and respect for each citizen. And my last object point in Navayana Buddhism is about women and Buddhism. There is a blame on Buddha that Buddha stopped or was hesitant or reluctant to give entry in his Sangha. I'm reading a passage from this quote from Buddha and Dhamma. Gladness will spring up within me. Thus gladdened joy will come to me. And so rejoicing all my frame with at peace. Being thus at peace, I shall experience a blissful content. And is that bliss in my heart will be in the rest of my life. That will be to me as an exercise of my moral powers, as exercise of the 7 kinds of wisdom. That's the line Dr. Ambedkar quotes from Patacha, the lower caste woman that Buddha ordained. And on January 1950, a Hindu author published an article in the popular Indian magazine called Air Weekly, arguing that the Buddha was to blame for the depressed condition of women in India, and that the ancient suttas depicted the Buddha as forever exhorting his monks to shun and be aware of women. An initial answer or response was given. That article was published by Lama Govind, a German scholar, in the Mahabodhi Journal of 1951. And amidst his intense defense for his final ratification of the Constitution of Dr. Ambedkar, took at the time to prepare a more exhaustive response to claim that Buddha was not anti-woman. So then he wrote a special article called Rise and Fall of Hindu Woman and who is responsible for it. I wrote a commentary on it which is published in a Baltic journal. So Ambedkar argued that and the occasional passage of the scripture that appears to impute the misogyny of the Buddha, such as his initial hesitance to ordain women and his warning to the monks to be mindful in the presence of women, were later interpreted by the monastic who were in the fact misogynist. He cites historian Thomas Rhys Davies support of his thesis based on the massive evidences of Buddha's frequent and respectful association of lay and ordained women. In addition to the cases of Amrapali, Vishaka, he cites the Buddha's tutoring of Queen Mallika and the 500 alms women who came to him for a regular instruction. As to the legend of the Buddha's hesitation to ordain women, Ambedkar acknowledges that the concern about the maintenance of celibacy by the monks and the facts that the women of the time deprived of religious rights and therefore from the liberation. So that's the position Dr. Ambedkar takes, and he also goes into the system of analysis, how Buddha was careful of the society of that time. We were living in a jungle, in the caves. Will women be safe? And there are passages in Pali Suttas where Buddha expresses the concern, and he was in that conversation with Ananda and his close associates. So I think that's what I wanted to say. And immediately after embracing Buddhism, Dr. Ambedkar went to Kathmandu on the invitation of King of Nepal, and he was addressing to the Buddhist audiences, not to the untouchables. Buddhist monks and the activists and scholars from Thailand, Tibet, Myanmar, China, Vietnam, and King asked him to speak on Buddhism and communism. That's why Dr. Ambedkar said that the means that communists wish to adopt in order to bring about communism is a violence or killing of the opposed. Their lives there lies the fundamental difference between the Buddha and Karl Marx. The Buddha's means of persuading people to adopt the principle are by persuasion, by moral teaching, and by love. He wants to conquer the opponent by inculcating in him the doctrine that only love and not the power can conquer anything. And then he says that, actually clip is available on YouTube, he says with a full force that you go with your own way, you go with your ideology. I know Buddha's path is a long path. Some might say it's a tedious path, but I have no doubt that Buddha's way is the surest way. The emphasis on the surest way that the Buddha tried to evoke that violence is not a solution, war is not a solution, but the dialogue and conquering your opponents by love is the solution. So here we hear not the pragmatism of Dewey or Ambedkar than what modern mentors in political economic theory was trying to say, but there we listen the echo of Dhammapada. Nahi verena verani averenecha sammati. Hatred cannot be seized by hatred, but it can be seized only by love. So I think this interpretation, these are the pillars which I really could not do justice as I wanted to, was trying to bring when he was presenting Navayana Buddhism. Now, by forgetting Buddha's Dhamma or insights, we cannot claim Navayana Buddhism. It cannot be mere political assertion. It cannot be mere this sect vis-a-vis that sect, or this tradition vis-a-vis that tradition. What Dr. Ambedkar wanted to bring in is an inclusivity, of course in political form democracy, but in a spiritual form a deep human concern that will allow each individual to liberate from their own conditioning. Thank you very much.
Let's take a couple of questions. We have 15 minutes for
First of all, thank you. I think that right before your talk, I'm really happy that we're privileged to hear this interpretation and understanding of Ambedkar and Navayana Buddhism. I'm just going to post something as I was doing a little bit of research on the scholarly resource Wikipedia. But I found an interesting critique of Navayana Buddhism on that page. So I was wondering, what you think about that, how you would react to what I'm about to share. So the statement is that scholars broadly accept that the depictions of the Buddha as a social reformer by individuals like Ambedkar are inaccurate. And I was wondering, I'm sure you've encountered that before, what is your thought on that?
Well, I encountered something like this question. If we try to change something without having a deep insights of nature of reality, we will bring the change, but that will remain at the surface. It may not go right down to the root cause of inequality or any injustice. And if we try to not to address the social change and go deeper into mere our own solution, that becomes the individualistic approach to the religion. That was the major difference Dr. Ambedkar was trying to bring between Hinayana and Mahayana. Instead to emphasize on the arhathood, which is my emancipation, my salvation is important, which is important, and then overlook the social aspect of it. On the other hand, Bodhisattva ideal emphasis on the social change or the liberation of all sentient beings, right? But foremost forgetting sometimes the emphasis that has been given on your individual development. I think both are right and both are equally important. Dr. Ambedkar was trying to find the higher middle way, the Ucham Madhyam Marga, if I put it that way, the higher middle way to have a balance between the social and the political, not to mere make that as a protest model, but to bring a notional change as he expresses in the Annihilation of Caste, not just made in the forms but also in the facts. So that's what he's hinting at when he says Navayana Buddhism. And it will be ongoing debate because it's a new experience, a new ways that Dr. Ambedkar trying to present the Buddha before the world in our own time. So we do say I am Buddhist, but I suddenly go back into the conventions where they remain to some extent detached from the social cause or the social suffering or the world around them. So mere charity is not enough. We need a transformative aspect. So his master, Jyotiba Phule, he quotes him and says that there is a difference between reformation and transformation. So reformation is an enemy of transformation. So I can just rearrange the room, but system remains the same, and then it goes online. But my fundamental tendency, the conditions that I carry in my mind doesn't change. Thank you for asking that question.
We have more questions.
Yes.
I guess my question would be following up on, understanding how to bring change about. It seems like, again, you have to look at what are the conditions of society that exist at that time. And I'm just wondering if Dr. Ambedkar does use some form of class analysis or
What analysis I mean?
class analysis,
Right.
Especially given the focus on these disadvantaged classes within that society and the use of the ideology, as you pointed out, for one class to take ownership or protection of that. So does he look at sort of the class analysis and distribution of economic resources at all in arriving at sort of a Buddhist understanding of the need to take action?
Oh, definitely. While he was interpreting the notion of equality, it comes both in Annihilation of Caste, which is recently echoed in his last book, Buddha and Dhamma, where he defines equality. He says that I accept that all are not equal. It can be a fiction. When you say everyone in this room is equal, that's untrue. We have different inheritance or probably genetic. He doesn't use the word birth because that was heavily loaded with the caste, right? And then he says there is a inequality in that sense, or personal capacities. That's the third parameter he puts. But he said, but equality must be the governing force. We must not treat them unequally. And then he cites the example of Sangha, how Buddha's Sangha was sort of, what can I say, infusing the equal potential in each caste without their judgment on the basis of inheritance. That's how the analysis is of class. But class word is sort of understood differently in this country. Class, there was a Varna class, the Varna system, the four class system of society. Actually, Dr. Ambedkar was trying to contextualize the spirit of equality in that context, in the Varna context, not economic class.
Great, thank you.
I'm sorry if you already addressed this question because I got your late, but did Dr. Ambedkar think about Christianity or Judaism or Islam as alternative faiths to turn to. In Christianity, there is a strong tradition, one possible tradition, of emphasizing an egalitarian ideology. Did you prefer Buddhism simply because it was part of the South Asian tradition?
I think he considered all religion, and he closely studied Islam, Christian, and he said somewhere that to avoid his contradiction within the country, that he preferred the religion of Indian origin. And then he had two choices: Sikhism. He was very close to convert to Sikhism, but he was a principal to Khalsa College, and he taught there, and he sent some of his delegates to study the Sikhism. And he found in the kitchen there are discrimination among lower caste or what they call majhabis, or come from the Vaidasi background. There is a discrimination between the high class Sikhs and the lower class Sikhs. And then he dropped that idea. He was very close to the Sikhism. In fact, in Annihilation of Caste, which is this book written in 1936, 20 years before his conversion, he said that you must take the stand of Buddha and what Guru Nanak took. So he was very close to those two choices. But then he thought probably, Buddhism is the best solution for that. But second point is more philosophic point. He knew that idea of divinity is the source of inequality, and he was extremely careful of that. That needs to amplify much more the metaphysical reasons that is given to justify the inequalities, and idea of poverty or slavery that must not be justified by the religion. He was very strong opinion of that. He said that slavery is an antithesis of religion, and he did not want slavery in any form. He did not find that in Buddhism, so he converted to Buddhism. But he studied, I have not come across this. Is there any soul that he came close to convert to Christianity?
Okay, thank you very much.
If you'll bear with us for 7 more minutes, you can bear witness to an exciting development here at the University of Texas at Austin. My name is Scott Stroud. I'm a professor over in communication studies. I'm affiliate faculty at the South Asia Institute. I'd be over here more often if it wasn't a 20-minute commute each way. It's a big campus. But SAI has so many awesome things going on about, every activity at South Asia. And I'm excited when people like Dr. Raut come and the Anti-Caste Student Club make events like this happen, bring Ambedkar into these discussions, because he's part of the wonderful diversity of voices and thinkers from South Asia we ought to take seriously. Now think about it for a second. As a young, untouchable, Bhimrao Ambedkar, back in like the 1890s, was literally excluded from his classroom. He had to sit outside because of this religious custom that he was polluting. Who do we include in our education? In the room, in our syllabi, in our research? Now sometimes we exclude people because of overt bias. That's what happened to Baba Sahib, Bhimrao Ambedkar. But oftentimes it's just from lack of access, lack of imagination. You just didn't think this person fit in here. And I discovered Ambedkar 10 years ago. But when I first came across him, I said, I don't need to work on it. He's an activist. He's a politician. He's a lawyer. But then it turns out, through people like Dr. Raut and others, I found out he's a great thinker. Probably like any of the philosophical heroes I've wrestled with, Contra John Dewey. So it's exciting that today you're going to be here and help us celebrate in the next couple minutes a donation of Baba Sahib's books to the South Asia Institute, who's graciously accepting them. And this will hopefully strike a blow against students and faculty that just don't think that Ambedkar has 4 million words in English to offer, to our scholarship and our teaching. So, would you help me welcome one of the leading lights of the Ambedkarite Buddhist Association of Texas, Abad, Yogesh Kankal. Come on up here, Yogesh.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, responsible for graciously accepting the donation from ABAT. So ABAT, Ambedkar and Buddhist Association of Texas. I'm not going to go as detailed as these researchers and scholars have said, because I'm a regular professional who works in a mechanical industry. So sorry, I have to clarify that because I'm not an IT guy. So, anyways, so I wanted to go back to why ABAT is doing this. So I came to this country 20 years ago, and when I came to here, during one of the learn sessions, I was referring to my colleagues, and when I mentioned Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, the term was, oh yeah, the Abraham Lincoln of East. I felt that term was used very loosely. Though there are very good similarities between Abraham Lincoln and Dr. Ambedkar, both work toward the emancipation of their community. Well, not their community, I would say, because Lincoln was not working towards their community, but at least they worked towards a black community, whereas Ambedkar was working towards his community's emancipation. And the path that he took, Ambedkar took, was very different than what Lincoln took. And Dr. Raut very well explained how he took the path of Buddhism to take and get the emancipation of his community. So the main reason why we want to donate these books is to spread the word of Ambedkar to everyone. So that these terms which are very, and again it could be my oversight that I'm thinking that this is being very loosely used, but to get over that, I think the word, look at these books. These are the books that Ambedkar wrote himself. These contain a lot of speeches which were delivered. Some of them were not delivered because he was not even allowed to deliver those speeches. So everything is readily available here. So that's the main intention why we want to donate this. So ABAT, Ambedkar and Buddhist Association of Texas, along with Anna, who is the Ambedkar Association of North America, they have collaborated together to donate this book. So with that, I will not take too much time, and I think we should go ahead and do this.
Thank you. Maybe our father here in Texas. You guys, maybe on that side of this.
Mary, if you want to join us, since you're the main person here with the books library.
Take a picture.
Can I just say thank you on behalf of the South Asia Institute and the Coalition for Caste Abolition. They have worked closely with our institute and our community here, and Scott has been a wonderful colleague bringing us all together. So thank you, and I look forward to many more interactions with this community, and thank you for the gift.
Smile. Here we go. Because of the wonderful Ambedkarites in the United States working on this, there have been programmers that have digitized all 4 million words on BAWS, with the original pagination. Our library buys my man John Dewey's works for $8,000 with the critical edition. The Ambedkarite Buddhists made the critical edition for free. So go to BAWS.in if you want to search and look through any of this on your own, or come to the study lounge and look at this here in hard copy. Thank you all for showing up. This moment, revision of these books is not happening only in our university, but across the United States. There was a possibility